Welcome to another episode of Area Control Bros, where we talk about area control games mostly.
Mostly.
Mostly, yeah, it's true. This is a very special episode here, a very unique episode we've got, as this is a re-recorded episode. Can we call it a re-recorded? It'll never be the same thing,
It's
right?
not a rerun if nobody knows that there was an original run.
Right. But we have talked about these games before, and it was not released because of some video problems. And
Yeah,
so I think that the feel of this is going to be a little bit different. I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, long-term listeners, all two of you or whatever, will know that we bring up Kemet pretty often when we talk about area control games. We finally recorded a Kemet episode, and then the recording software collapsed, and we lost the recording entirely, and etc. But anyway, we're recording a new one now. And we're going to talk about, in addition to Comet, a game called Fractured Sky, which we're going to tackle first. And Fractured Sky is an Ivy Studios game, 7.6 on BGG, and distantly in, not in sight of any major cities in terms of the overall rank. It's a pretty niche game, but it is an area control game, so we're allowed to talk about it.
Even if
Um,
it weren't, we only mostly talk about area control
that's
games.
true. Just
Hmm.
as we mostly talk about area control games, this game is only mostly area control. Or maybe
Right.
it's mostly not area control. But either way, it is a combination of bidding, area control, and I'd say a little worker placement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I would,
hmm,
I would agree with that. I would agree with that assessment. I
I don't
got
know if I
the
would call it worker placement necessarily. But yeah, but the resources. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
mean
down.
the sometimes I mean it's area control when you're fighting and it's worker placement when when you don't care.
I think of it more as bidding that part of the game when you're putting down your ships. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
To me, that's like a bid,
That's
but it's a
true.
weird bid,
Yeah.
right?
So it's mostly bidding and area control. And
But
this
it's
is an
like worker
interest
placement bidding. It's very strange.
I'm sorry, I was out of line.
No, no, I'm like agreeing with you that it. I hadn't thought of it like that, but it is kind of worker placement and at the
Mhm.
same time as being bidding. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing we can say for sure is that it is a board game.
Yes, it is a board game, and I'd say the defining part of this game is the bluffing and bidding. That's
Yeah.
kind of the core of this game. And you're essentially making three bids per round with a total of 10 possible bidding powers. So you could do like one, seven, and two. If you go over 10, then you get put in the timeout zone. And your bidding is negatively affected. So we don't really see that happen.
Yeah, unless you make an absolute mistake like I have done. Um,
When you fail to count to 10.
And
yeah.
I couldn't read that you made that mistake. I had like your first two discs right, but not your third one, and it actually caused me to misplay against you.
I
Although,
think
had
I
you done
think
it
I
right, it wouldn't have mattered.
yeah, I think I played like an 8 and a 1. And then I was like, oh crap, there's not like a way to do this.
Right.
I, other than to play as a 0, I guess. Might have been what I ended up doing. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
anyway, oh, sorry, were you gonna say something, Blake?
I was just gonna say that while it is a really strange game with a lot of strange mechanics coming together in a way that I haven't seen before, I do think it all really works. I feel pretty good about this one, and of course we'll talk about a major rule exception that we have on this that I think we all would agree improves it. Um, but for the most part, I think it all really works together. I have fun with this one. I feel like it flows really well. It seems to go quickly, and I'm not usually caught up thinking too long about my turn. It's good.
So this is like a pretty quick game. It's definitely in the light category. So you're kind of putting it in the same group as stuff like El Grande, Tammany Hall. Maybe Huang is like a little bit longer, or is Huang about the same length?
I think Huang can be, but well, no, Huang's pretty set length. It's probably
Yeah,
a little bit longer, and then of course Raw as well, right? I
Yeah.
think that's
Of
the
course
biggest
Ra,
comparison.
and of course Ra is another huge comparison point here, but we'll bring that up a little bit later, I think. Um, but this is a game where we also made a very significant house ruling. The core of the game, which is the bidding via putting the discs down, is really solid, and we all like it. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think
Yeah,
I like
I
it.
like it.
I
I
think it's
like it.
Yeah.
there's a lot of tension, and everything matters when you have this house rule in play. And the fight over the very limited amount of victory point locations per round is tense. And you are kind of thinking a lot about, well, is he bluffing? Is he going there for real? And then there's also the your access to information in this game, which is kind of the fun part. You typically have limited access to the information of where the victory points are. There's one that everybody knows where it is. And there are anywhere from one to, is it four total hidden
There's
Five.
ones?
five, and it's
Five
five
hidden
total
ones?
rounds in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So up to five hidden ones. And by performing one of the game actions through which you're spending resources, you can take a peek, and only you will know where one of the hidden ones is, unless somebody else also peeks at that same one. But it costs resources to do so, so it's not just a free thing you can do. And if you choose not to go that route and you can put down your bids early, that's also going to give you information, but in kind of a opposite way where it's telling you where the victory points aren't. You're going to be able to draw from the deck of locations that were not put into the victory point locations and thus know a little bit more. And sometimes you're going to have those awkward situations where you put down your guy and you pull the card out of the deck and it's the location that you just put your guy down on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's not, right? And
And
and and
sometimes it's
that's the
not.
thing, right? Like you can risk putting out something earlier, especially in those later rounds when there are, because the information you're getting is where is this not? Well, when there's five hidden star falls out, they call them the public or the private objectives, secret objectives, hidden star falls. Um, there's only three locations that are not in the game when you're playing with three players or less at that point. And so it's really valuable to get that extra piece of information. Game's beautiful about how much information it gives you. And even as Will mentioned, okay, well, you can peek at these hidden star falls. That's a really big part of the game. You're allowed to try to peek at a starfall that someone else has already looked at. But there's this really fun balance there of like, well, I can kind of try to screw this person over a little bit and like, butt in on their fun where they're doing this maybe because they need to be stopped, maybe they're ahead on a few points. But I always risk the possibility of not getting a resource back. It costs two resources to peak. You get one resource back of a particular type. It has to be a type of resource that's available at that spot. Well, some of the resources have two of the same type, and you can't gain a resource that someone else has already gained. And so if someone has gone and taken, a gold from somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm going to go there too, and it's a double gold, you get nothing, and so you always have to be a little bit cautious about, well, how badly do I need to try to pin this person down and overlap information with them instead of just getting information for myself.
Yeah, you get
Um,
nothing, and also you tell everybody else that it's in the double gold location because you can't hide that anymore.
yeah, you give everyone else information. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I really like in terms of this mechanic, I enjoy just putting my ship in the public starfall location first. Because you
yeah.
can just get to the public one first. You're fighting over something that you know is out there, and even if it comes up that, oh, it's not that location again, it's still fine. Like that's still good enough information because you know you're at least in an area that does have a starfall. And if you don't draw that card, then you might even get a double. Like I don't think we saw any in the last game we played, but like there can be one that falls in the area that has a public anyway.
Yeah, there's only so many spots, right? It's not even that unlikely, really.
Yeah.
I
Can
mean,
happen.
just as equally likely for every spot, right? But there's not too many of them, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that when we played, actually. That wasn't a piece of strategy I picked up. It's a good point.
That the public location is the only one that could actually be a double starfall.
No, rather that if you are going to place out a ship first to get information on where the starfall is not, and you have the option of just going to where the public starfall is. I had avoided the public starfalls like the plague because I'm thinking, well, everybody's going to be competing over that. I want to get my information early by peaking and then go where other people are not, right? And that was kind of my mindset on it. When you flip it on its head and going to the public one and getting some information on about where the hidden starfalls are not, that's pretty smart. It's a different way to play, and I think the game offers a good amount of that, not just in terms of the strategy of where you're placing your airships, what starfalls you're going for, but also in terms of the actual area control, which is like these little buildings that you make, how early you want to get out your markets versus what is the other one? The
The
citadels, towers,
fortress, I think.
fortress. Yeah, the fortress is right. And so the citadels improve. They get you more resources from winning battles with your airships, or losing battles as well, really, which is part of why they're so nice. And the fortresses get you more power, so it's easier to win. Um, and I think that you can put out fortresses first, you could put out markets first, you could put out a mix first. Um, you are incentivized to put something out quickly because at the beginning of the game, the spots more in the middle of the board that are connected to more islands are available, and they're just going to get filled up by the time you know turn three, maybe even turn two rolls around. They're starting to get tight. Oh,
Here.
Yeah, certainly the ones that lead to four different locations are going to be filled up before you know it almost. You got to grab those while they're hot.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm gonna touch on something, I don't the art is not great. The like PS1 graphics for the
yeah,
like factions and stuff. It's kind of like, and the color, some of the colors are really like weird and ugly. There's like this kind of baby puke yellow, like yellowy green
yeah,
and purple. Yeah, the board itself is kind of nice, and the little ships are cool enough, and the magnets are, give the game probably like a full point in terms of
yeah.
like
The magnets
production
are nice.
value.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
game benefits a lot from its deluxification for the magnet toy factor. It's really, really cool.
Magnet School, the credit cards are not as necessary. The thick cards that barely fit in the like burgeoning sleeves, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
if normal cards are PB and J, these cards are like a triple decker club sandwich, you know.
Yeah, they're big. They're very
They're
big.
so thick that they would break a card reader. You know, if you
yeah,
like tried to put them in at the gas station, like you might have the whole gas station might explode. It's just like
yeah, they're thicker than a credit card, I would say.
twice as
Like,
thick, at least I
yeah,
think, yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know how they printed cards that thick. I have no idea where they got them manufactured.
They didn't. They were forged.
Yeah.
and
That's
forged each one of them.
that's what you pay extra for, you know. And that's
Right.
the other thing we'll talk about the practicality of owning this game, because there's the retail version which doesn't have the cool magnets, and doesn't have like does it have like still like the ships or
No, no. Instead of ships, you have, I believe, just cardboard chits that have the vote on them or the bid, and you place them face down and they get flipped face up.
yeah.
Hmm.
Not as cool as magnets, but the deluxe version, and I, you know, I, I know it's embarrassing to ask the question of Blake, but how much is the deluxe version for?
I think we looked this one up and it was like one somewhere between 160 and 180. And then
Yeah,
you start looking at shipping and you start looking at card sleeves and you start looking at, the whole lot, and it adds up.
yeah,
And
Yeah,
plus now there's a expansion out for it, and maybe you want the metal starfalls for the expansion. Maybe you want the metal starfalls for the base game. Metal starfalls are a lot. So they give you so many options to deluxify it. And even Okay, well, there's a difference between the deluxe and the super deluxe. The super deluxe has pre-painted miniatures. You know, how many games are doing that? Let me tell you, it adds like $50 onto the cost.
Yeah, it's
They're
this is a
cool, but
game
yeah.
where I don't think we can reasonably recommend getting the deluxe version for like the weight of game it is.
Yeah, and certainly not the super deluxe.
Yeah, but it's still a good game. I mean, whether or not you got magnets and pre-painted airships, I think like the core of the game is solid as long as you
Yes.
implement the house rule,
Which
which I
which
think
we haven't discussed yet. We
which
haven't
Yeah.
we
decided.
basically after playing this game enough times, we completely removed the top row objectives. And most of those objectives are really weird. And there is a mechanic for being able to peek at them. And but when you peek at them, you're usually in a position where you might not even be able to have an advantage in scoring them. Sometimes it's having the fewest of a certain building or the most of a certain building or having the most skimmers, the fewest skimmers, et cetera, et cetera. But because you spent resources to peak, you might no longer be in contention to have the most of something that people want to have the most of innately, like having the most markets or fortresses. And if it's having the fewest, you might have just incidentally been building these things that you want anyway, and somebody's behind you, and maybe they don't want to build one anyway without even knowing what the objective is, and they just scored accidentally. It's the information of what those objectives are is not valuable. And most importantly, separately from the peeking at them not being that effective, it determines the game in it throws a huge random RNG wrench into the game that makes it worse measurably. And when we played with our house rule, the game goes like maybe even more than a full point up out of 10 because suddenly all your decisions matter. But when you play with the game as is out of the box with those objectives, somebody's just going to randomly, maybe the
Yeah.
person who was in
And
last
they're a
place is going to,
trap too.
yeah,
It's not like very good strategic because you can pay to view those objectives as well. You don't get a point back, or you don't get a resource back rather.
yes.
And so they cost, basically twice as many resources as the bottom row ones that you have a lot more control over. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Anyway, oh, yeah, go ahead, Blake.
I was just gonna say to definitely use the house rule. It's so powerful. It makes the game so much better. You reduce all this variance from just random freaking points that you have no control over. You keep thinking you have control over them because you can look at them, but I think the more that you play this one, the more you'll realize that like peeking at them is a bad move because it costs twice as much as peeking at the hidden starfalls, and it gives you less useful information despite that.
It's essentially a party game with the top row objectives, and then you remove it, and it becomes like a nice, like tight, tense bidding game with area control elements. And so
Yeah.
it's quite dramatic how much better design it becomes without that. It begs the question why it was even added to begin with. But without us
Yeah.
knowing for sure, we can't say.
I think our buddy that was playing it with us was like, "Oh yeah, this is for the 10-year-olds. This is like, if you've just been
Yeah,
like not paying too much of attention, it's like, I got a point,
yeah.
like
That's what I think Jason said that he was saying like, oh, this is for the like for the kid who's been dragged into the board game with his parents and their friends, and he just randomly gets a few points.
Yeah. Keep the kids happy with the top row.
Yeah,
When the
hand them.
adults come to play, get rid of it.
Yeah, when you're gaming, you just take that top row out. Don't even look back. No question.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the interest of time, do you guys want to move to scoring, or is there anything else that we have to say about Fractured Sky?
nope.
I don't have anything else. Yeah, let's do scoring. I'll say the rest of what I have to say during that.
Sure. I guess I'll go first. I think without the house rule, this is a 5 for me, and with the house rule, this is a upward trending 7.5. Where I like it a lot. I think this might be one of my favorite auction games once we did the house rule. It is not as good as Raw or as affordable as Raw. Even the Super Deluxe Raw is like less than half the price. Um, but it's still fun, and I think for a different crowd that may want to have there be more of a board than a pure auction game, this is the kind of game that can really enable both crowds to enjoy. Um, playing together. And I think the art style also might be better for like a younger crowd. They might like it more. So I think as always with any board game, you have to think about who you're going to play with. I think for a certain crowd, this game can be a real hit. And as I said, it's an upward trending 7.5. I think it's solid, and uh, I've become pretty happy with it after we house ruled.
Okay. I give this one a 7.2. I like it quite well. I without the house rule, I think it only goes down to like a 6.7 for me. I like it well enough, even sometimes with the like top row. It didn't obviously I think I only looked at like one or two. I know Will was the one that was burned a lot by
I
it.
suffered the most.
He suffered a lot. He suffered so we wouldn't have to. He
Yeah,
warned us. He would tell us not to look at them, and we would anyway in our hubris, thinking that we had any control.
yeah,
Oh,
Um,
not I. I haven't looked at a single one.
yeah. Blake
yeah.
never looked.
But I think it was mentioned in the last episode that it's a it's got a Venn diagram of a couple different things. You know, it's got the area control, the bidding, and the like hidden information. And I think it's a good transition game if you got like a group that's into any one of those things and you want to try to get them to branch out into some maybe different kind of games. I think it's got like a little bit of all of that in a light enough package that you can be like introduce some people to some new concepts that they might not be familiar with in a board game yet, and go, hey, what if we played a game that was more like this one thing that you might like about Fractured Sky, you know?
Yeah, it could be a good way to kind of filter out and figure out what someone might like other than this, and they probably will like this, I think, because it is quite fun, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give Fractured Sky with the house rule an 8 and without the house rule a 6. And I do think it's that much of a difference. I get a lot more out of it when you tighten the game up a little bit and make it a little bit less, variance on the points. And I really do believe that it's that important. And the reason I'm giving it an 8 is that I just love the hidden information in this game. I think it gives you the perfect amount to work with, to think about, to be able to create some really good table talk without feeling like table talk is going to give your strategy away. Um, and I love that in any game, and I think this game executes on it really, really well. Um, yeah, it just creates such a fun environment for me that yeah, I really like it. So giving it an 8.
Yep, yep,
All
pretty
right.
solid.
That's Fractured Sky, everybody.
That's Fractured Sky. Moving on to Kemet. We're going to be talking about Kemet Blood and Sand, the 2021 version. It's if you played the original Kemet or own the original Kemet, the newer version is essentially just a few minor rule changes and includes the expansion that adds the black technology tiles to the game, but otherwise is quite similar to the original edition. Um, it's been toyified though. The pyramids are now actual pyramids and not D4s, which not that there's anything wrong with those D4s. They're pretty cool. But
The D4 gets the job
the
done,
D4
you
gets the
know?
job done. The pyramids are a little more toyish, but they're also pretty cool. They look good on the board. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a million internet arguments about which is better among those, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. What matters is that the core gameplay of this game rocks. It's a great game.
I would argue that what matters is the giant scorpion,
That's
you
true.
know?
Hmm.
Or perhaps even the Sphinx,
You're
you
stealing
know?
my point. I was going to bring up the giant scorpion.
Well, you ought to then.
One thing I
Tell
said
us
in
about it.
the Lost episode that I don't want to not say in the rerun remake episode is that this is a game where the cover art of the game 100% perfectly depicts what is going to happen in the game.
Oh yeah.
This
Yeah.
is in a lot of board games, the cover might be quite abstract or might show something that is you're not isn't really going to be what playing the game is like. But the cover of Comet Blood and Sand is just utter chaos and the scorpion and elephant and like everything's just going crazy. People are
Yeah.
teleporting in via an obelisk, and it's like, yeah, this is just like it's just another turn of the game of Kemet. It's just this
If
is
people
totally
don't
normal.
seem into Komet while you're playing it, you ought to just prop up the lid of the box like in front of each battle and be like, yeah, look at them fight it, and like point it out or whatever you got to do because it's an exciting box. It's got a lot going on there. I couldn't agree more. It really does highlight the feel of the game, especially if you allow yourself to lean into the goofiness and the frequency of the battling and how much fun that can be.
Yeah, everything in Kemet is leaning you toward smashing action figures together. It's like it wants you want to be going out and you want to be fighting. That's how you win. It's how you get VP. You go and mess somebody up. Um, and you research some cool tech to better mess up other people, and you can get in right away. And even if you lose, you can just sacrifice all of your dudes to the gods, and that's great. You get some money back, you get a refund, and you can build more
Yes.
dudes, more blood. There's not really like a downward spiral in this game usually. It's just like you can recover pretty easily if you get like all of your dudes killed. There's no like twiddling your thumbs thinking like, oh, I'm never, my economy is boned. I can't do anything anymore. Um, Usually you can bounce back pretty quick. You like can get right back into the action. It's one of the things
Yeah,
I love about Commit.
Yeah, I
definitely.
think a good way to look at this game is this is a stupendous effort from the designers to fix a lot of long-standing complaints or issues with area control as a broad genre in board games. So there is a classic complaint about area control games, which is that the first round of the game is normally building troops up and not and it the first round of the game is going to look a lot like other first rounds of the game. And this is true even for good area control games. And it's not the case in Kemet because you start with 10 of your 12 possible guys on the map ready to go right off the bat. So you don't really need to build up at all.
I think actually 13 out of 15.
No, sorry, did I say
No, it's
I,
no, it's 10 out of 12. That's why the extra three guys that you can get from the black tech are so important because you could field
yeah, I think it's
another
10 out of
troop of
12 because
fives.
Is that
it's
right?
five times two, right?
Yeah. It's five times two, and then you have two spares.
Yeah.
All right, my
Well,
bad.
well, anyway, and not only do you start out with the bulk of your possible maximum fighting force on the board, you can also teleport them right into the fray right away. So right away, there's another complaint, which is that even once you build up your guys, it takes forever to move them around, or moving is kind of annoying. We talked about bloodstones on this podcast, and moving is a huge pain in the butt in that game. In this game, it's the opposite. You can get where you need to get, and that's not usually an issue. The only exception is getting over city walls, and that's supposed to be difficult. And there's some ways to get around that. But as far as the main board is concerned, you can be teleporting and getting all these bonuses to movement that are very impactful. And it's easy for you to show up to stop somebody or throw a wrench in their plans or take
Yeah.
advantage of people in a moment of weakness.
I want to bring this up while it's relevant. The main way to get around the like needing to scale people's walls is a giant bird, you
Yes,
know?
it even makes
Like,
sense. It even makes sense. Yeah.
like I don't know. That's something I love about Komet is like, oh yeah, a lot of the texts and stuff are exciting. Even like some of the marginal benefits change a lot of how you play. I mean, like you can't really talk about this game without talking about all of the different like texts that you can get and the different
Yes.
combinations. And it's a tight market too, and it's like exclusive. You can't get the same tech that other people have aside from there's like two copies of each level one tech. But past that, it's all pretty much unique. And once somebody has it, they have it. You can't have it. You got to
Yeah,
go find something else that you're going to be doing, and piece something together.
yeah. I like and I think it's important that thought that you brought up at the beginning there, which is like the game is really hard to talk about without taking it, and saying, well, here's like the complete product. Here's everything that's going on. You could understand every rule in this game, but until you see the whole list of combat cards, you're not going to understand how the game works. And then even if you understand that, you're not going to understand how the game works until you see the whole tech tree, you know? And even once you do that, you're going to need to see the other three tech trees, you know? And
Yeah.
so and then there's going to be interactions that you're not thinking about until you see them, you know? So there's a lot going on here. It's absolutely incredible that it works at all because there's so many moving parts, and yet it does. It feels awesome to play. You feel like you're making smart plays. You also feel like you're making dumb plays. You feel like you can't do everything you want. You feel like you're doing a lot despite that. And you know, it really, really walks that line for me in such a pleasing way. Um, and I really like the game for that reason.
And so yeah, just to go back to the list of things that it's fixing. Ben went right into the next point I was going to make, which is that people like asymmetric factions in area control games, especially that's become more and more prominent. And this game, but one of the issues with that is that usually with a game with very asymmetric factions, you have to tell somebody how to play that their faction before the game begins. Or like if it's Twilight Imperium, maybe they're doing research before they even get to the house to like read up and watch
Man,
YouTube videos on the
I,
faction.
I'm
But
doing research on all of the factions.
on
If
all of
I
that,
know,
yeah. But in this game, because there's no inherent asymmetry to the factions, you're building the asymmetry as you go. So there's not really like a pre-game overhead to sort of not falling on your face and exploding. You can you're creating the asymmetry just in the act of playing the game. But because of that, you're going to know exactly what each of the asymmetries are because you chose them. And in that sense, it makes what might otherwise be quite heavy, like if it were the case in Kemet that each faction was like the black faction had the whole black tech tree at its access to access immediately, it'd be overwhelming for a new player. But it isn't. And that's really nice. And Ben also brought
Yeah,
up another crucial issue in area control, which is the runaway leader problem. And this isn't a problem only in area control, but as Ben said, the when you're losing or even if you're winning, you can just kill your own guys and turn them into pure cold Egyptian cash and immediately put that back into the economy for your next offensive. And so it's just go, go, go. Did we attack and lose a bunch of guys? That's fine. Did we attack and not lose that many guys? Cool. We'll hold here. And whatever you're doing, you're going to have a satisfying way to make use of it. There's not really any half measures in Komet. You're just going all in all the time in whatever direction you're going. And
yes.
that's great. As Blake said, it's very pleasing this game because it doesn't ever feel like you're waffling in this game or like just dirtling. You're always doing stuff and everything feels cool to do.
Yeah.
yeah, there's no, I mean, then this is like Risk. There's no turtling up in Australia or something. There's no like, oh, I'm just gonna like keep putting a bunch of guys in the same spot. Maximum amount of guys is five. You can build like a defensive engine, and that's like the blue tech tree is good at that. But there's like a limited amount that you can actually stick in an area. If you get attacked once, you're probably not going to be able to stay in that area and defend another one.
Yeah, even if you
Um,
win it.
yeah, even if you win.
Oh, and last point I was going to make is that people don't like it in area control games, or at least some people. This is obviously a very divisive topic in the community. Some people don't like it when it's just dice chucking, and this game is not dice chucking at all. That's a technically this game is like a completely open information area control game, except for the divine intervention cards, which are relatively minor. And sometimes they'll win a combat. Most of the time, it's just kind of a nice little bonus. But it is almost entirely open information and very different from Fractured Sky, which we just talked about, or Forbidden Stars, or what have you. And you know basically everything you need to know going into a combat, and then you make a decision based on that with your limited deck of cards that is also open information. Everybody has the same deck. And because you have to show what you played in the simultaneous reveal, people will know what cards are or aren't in your deck for the most part, and they'll know that if the +5 attack power has not been played, that the opponent will have access to that, and they might throw away two of their own guys in a last-ditch effort to win the battle. Um, in that sense, this game is also really great because it's like you have this very quick resolution, just flip one card over and that's it. And that's the whole combat. And then you're just doing some basic math. There's nothing complicated.
Yeah, I agree. I like the quick resolution of this. I think feel like some games are maybe almost scared to do quick resolution of battles because so often that is dice chucking and you know it's hard to make that feel the best, you know. And I really wish we could see some more systems like this with the single card reveal that make it work, but it's really hard to fit something like that into a lot of designs. You know, again, it just kind of works with the rest of Kemet. You know, it's hard to imagine it being placed in something else,
Yeah,
despite it being so
it
good.
works in the context of like the tech tree giving bonuses and things as well too.
Yes.
So it all kind of fits together. I don't think the
Yeah.
single card resolution would be as cool if like you didn't have kind of the extra tech stuff going on. But in the
Right. Yeah.
context of the greater game, it's great. And I think it's interesting.
Works so well. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess unlike Fractured Sky, where we can't really recommend a deluxeified version of the game on a value perspective,
Mm.
although like if you've got the money to spend, get your magnets. In this case's game, it's come to retail, so you can just buy Commit Blood and Sand, and don't worry about any of the Kickstarter stuff. It's all stuff you don't need. Just the basic version of the game is 100% sufficient.
Some of it is stuff that you probably shouldn't want. You
Yeah, it's
know,
like it's stuff
we
that even if it were given to me, I don't think I'd use. So
we talked about this too. We found out during the lost recording of this, let's say, that Will actually has a deluxe copy without even knowing it. One of the deluxeifications they can give is 25% larger miniature sizes. And
yeah,
let me tell you, it's nice for the dudage that you put out, but you really don't need that scorpion to be
no,
25% bigger,
it's
man.
it's I
It's a
don't
little
really
bit
care about
cool,
it at
but
all.
it's like, you know, that's a yeah, that thing's heavy, my man. I mean, that's like how many pounds do you think that scorpion is? Probably like maybe
Is
not
it
pounds.
accounts for most of the weight of the box, certainly.
Yeah. No, it's big though, and there's other stuff to it like you just don't need. They start bringing in like there's some of them that were like Greek gods or something like that. Am I
Yeah, they have like
misremembering that?
Cthulhu.
The
They've got all this
Cthulhu,
wacky
yeah.
stuff that doesn't fit, in my opinion. But even with the 20 or 25% bigger minis, this game does not have minis that are like as big as some Kickstarter games or CMON games. And the
Yeah.
minis are like whether the 20 to 25% band of size for these is about the right size for an area control game. It's like about the
Yeah.
size of like the Inish minis or something. You're in that nice zone where like the minis are big enough that you can see a few little details on them and they're your guys, but it's not you don't need to have like several boxes within your box all lined up like an
Yes.
Ankh or something, and it's going to be a whole extra headache during setup. It's not like that. They're small enough to be put in
And
a
you know,
little
I
baggie.
rip on the scorpion, but to be fair, it's like it's kind of is this cool thing that you get, and it adds to it that it's like
Yeah.
slamming it down, you know. So yeah,
Yeah, I think one thing that I really like about this game is the every single aspect of this game has player interactivity. And we brought it up during our Fractal video slash podcast, and this game and also in our Eclipse podcast, but this game has what I think, and you guys can agree or disagree with me, has the best limited tech market of any board game that I've played, in the sense that the tech's all there, and your access to it is limited by your investment into each of the colors. But you can interact by like, there's only one copy of each tech, except as Ben said, there's two of each copy in the tier ones. But even the tier ones are impactful. Every single tech is good in this game. Every single tech can be really awesome if you use it properly, and there are all sorts of interesting synergies, and it makes you want to have as much tech as you want. Like you want every tech. You're excited about the tech, and when somebody snatches out the exact tech that you want, it's like, oh no, I needed that, but actually you're going to get something that's really good anyway. And so the tech market doesn't really feel bad. You feel great whenever you're getting a tech. And because the tech market is going to be available no matter like every single game of Comet you play, you're not worrying about certain tech coming out of the bag or whether the tech is upside down or right side up like in
Right.
Fractal, in I think that there might be a minor worry that this would lead to the game being more solved and people like using the same builds every time. But because you can't interact with players, if somebody is doing something like that, you can start snatching parts of their synergy from them. And you can even steal their pyramid and then grab like a tier 4 from them before they can get it?
Yeah. I mean, if someone's taking defensive victory out of blue, I'm not going to also let them get the tech that allows them to have 7 dudage in an area instead of 5. I'm
Yeah, you
just
got to
not,
stop
you know?
that.
Like there's certain combinations that you're not going to allow to happen. Oh, you get a prayer point every time you lose a guy. Well, I'm not going to let you get the you can summon as many dudes as you want tech, because then you're going to build a level 4 pyramid in one turn and not even care because you'll summon all your guys back, right?
Mhm.
Like there's just certain things, oh, that's going to be too strong, and you have interaction points there. And those aren't even great examples. There's certain tech combinations where it's like, oh man, you just learn after a game or two, like you really got to stop them. If I had to give, it, you mentioned you're not pulling a tech out of a bag. I agree. It's not fractal, and you know, I'm thankful for that on this one. Um,
Or Eclipse.
yeah, it's not Eclipse. It's not Eclipse. It's not fractal. Thankful for both of those facts, really. Uh, No, the tech feels good in this. It's one of the best things. It's also maybe the only bad thing because it takes a little while to learn it.
Yep.
Your first play is going to be with your nose in the tech book. Your second play, your third play, your fifth play, your 10th play, you'll probably have your nose in the tech book trying to figure it out. I still do. And it's fun despite that. It's a fun discovery process with the techs and learning the combinations and everything.
The
But
de
it can take away some attention from the board state and everything.
the devs did know this, and that's why they give out these little magazines with all the tech in them to
Yeah,
so the players can peruse their magazine and think about what their next shopping spree is going to consist of.
right.
And
You get a plus 100% sky miles when you buy from the tech magazine.
Egyptian scorpion miles. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
Yeah.
it is. I agree, and we did say that talk about this in the last episode for a kind of a longer discussion. But we were talking about how and I mentioned this as it being this game would be kind of unreachably heavy if it were the asymmetry that were there to begin with. But even without that, for a new player, they are going to have to be studying the text quite thoroughly, and that is a downside of the game's design. I think it's if it's a game you're going to be playing multiple times, though, as I hope you would intend to with most board games you buy that's going to diminish over time, and gradually you'll be able to recognize quickly the key texts and know what to do about them and what to stop and that kind of thing. And that enables that kind of interaction we were talking about. I think there is kind of a point in this game where people are going to feel like, oh man, he's building the same thing every time. It's like, well, it's your duty to stop that. And that's the nature of this game is like, this game is you're supposed to be interacting with everybody else constantly, whether it's on the board, in a tech tree, however you can, shouting insults across the table. you know?
yes, that's effective. I've found.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see, I think that if I played this game like once or twice a week, I would still be having fun with it. You know,
Yeah,
like into like I could have fun pretty much every play, I think. Even if especially even if it was with the same group of people. Like I genuinely think that if it's like you're in college, you've got like a bunch of roommates or something, if you want to bust out a game every once in a while and make it like kind of a tradition, like this is a great one to keep coming back to.
Yeah, definitely. This
yeah,
this game didn't exist when I was in college, but if it did, we would have been jamming it for sure.
yeah. Kemet
um,
OP.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, I think is there anything else we did not mention? Uh,
Not that I can think of. You got anything, Ben?
No, I don't think I got anything.
Just a minor aside, the production of this game is nice. It's not like super game trays, Dwellings of Eldervale, Eclipse level or anything, but everything's well organized in the box, which is it's nice to see it. And there are little trays and things it comes with to help setting up easily. And as I said, it's got the little magazines for tech. The tech is all kind of also has its own trays. It'll take up a decent amount of this game does take up a decent amount of table space once you have everything out, like including the tech trees. But it flows really well, and it's not really fiddly at all once it's actually on the table, which is good. I
Yeah,
don't.
and it doesn't grow in space either, which is something that I'm
No, it
not.
doesn't.
That was a big problem with Galactic Renaissance, where it was like it was deceptively small, deceptively large. I don't know what you would say. It started off really small and then
It
would
was
get like
deceitful.
massive. Yeah. And I don't want to be deceived, I want to play the game. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to do the deceiving,
Oh, I do. I want to mention the grandma scale, and I think I said this in the last episode. The Kemet is a game for your cousin. It's for the guy you know is, into video games or whatever, maybe has played some board games. But you want to get him more into it. Obviously, if you're listening to our podcast and you're this far in, you're an absolute nerd. Like
True. True. True.
so this is a good one to convert people to being more board gaming, if you think they got it in them. Um,
Ben's absolutely correct. This is the game you introduce to your friends that don't play board games but are gamers, and they'll enjoy this game. It might take like a play to kind of get the hang of it, but it's definitely it's got that kind of appeal, for sure.
I've just remembered something that we didn't quite mention. You started to mention it, Will, about the runaway leader problem and how this game solves it. This
Oh
is a
yeah,
Matago game. It's got a Matago ending, and the Matago ending in this game involves a mechanic that's present from the beginning, right? It feels a little bit less forced in this one than Inish, even though I think Inish's is maybe a bit more elegant a design for me, including in that in-game condition. But in this game, there's permanent victory points and then there's temporary victory points. And so the permanent victory points are from end of turn, you control two locations, you get one permanent VP. Or if you win a battle as the attacker, you get a permanent VP. There's also some permanent VP you can buy on the tech tree. And there's, the defensive victory tech that can allow you to get permanent VP from winning a defensive victory, as the name would imply. That stuff's all set, but it's really, really hard to get to the threshold of victory points to win with only permanent VP. And so what ends up happening is people are going to come and try to take away your temporary VP, which is basically like, oh, you've got a level 4 pyramid. Well, that's temporary VP. Someone might try to take it from you. You've got control of some location on the map. Temporary VP. Someone's
well,
going to try to
also if
come
they're
get you.
taking a spot from you on the map and they win a battle to do so, that's a permanent VP, so that's even more
Yeah.
catch up maybe.
Yes, and some swing there, right? And it can be very interesting. There's always some politics once someone hits, I think it's 10 victory points as the threshold to win, because they don't win right away. This is important to this. They win at the start of their next turn if they still have the requisite amount of victory points. So that's when everybody rushes to get the temporary VP
Everybody's got to
off.
come in and then try to stop you, which always is great fun. Even when you're the guy who everybody's rushing to stop, it's just fun to see the table leap into action, you know?
Yes. And it requires of you to sort of plan out like, well, how am I going to stay above it eventually? What am I going to do? Maybe it's best not to reach 10 VP first and to be the one that sort of leapfrogs ahead as everybody else dogpiles. And you start to think about that type of stuff, and it's very fascinating to me. I love that area of thinking about the game.
All right.
Ratings?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Why don't you go first, Ben, since you brought it up?
Sure. Yeah. I give Kemet a 9.3. I like Kemet a lot. It does a lot right. I think about this game more every time I play it. I'm one of those people that if If we wanted to play Kemet back to back, I totally would. Usually, people are wanting to move on to something else, but I I'd love to play this game a couple times in a row even. Um, I really enjoy it. I enjoy I've played this game even without you guys, like some of the times when I've gone to the meetup without you, and I enjoyed it with the people that I played it with then as well. Just a good one to bring to the table. Love it. Like a lot.
I like it a lot. Nice, dude. Yeah, 9.3, that's a respectable rating, Ben. I'm coming in hot with the 9.0, naturally point 0.
Hmm.
And it's really, really solid, this game. I really, really enjoy it. Recommend this for everybody. Give it a dang try. Doesn't matter if you like area control or not. This is the prime example. You're going to figure out if you like area control. If you think you don't, you might be wrong, man, because Kemet's
Yeah,
here to prove it to you. And
true,
and
true.
it's really, really great. It all works together so well. I love the in game. I love the piggybacking, the leapfrogging, and it's just a game that inspires a lot of really fun table talk, really fast paced. You always feel like you're doing something. So it's hard to find much to complain about this one. Doesn't have the magical properties of some of the games that I've given a 9.5 to. It doesn't quite touch me in the same way. And that's okay because this is one that I'm always up to play.
Yeah, Kemet is not a revolution. It is a very good iteration on, it is a very it has taken, as Blake said, a lot of the problems that people have with and addressed all of them in a very organized way. It's not a
It's the platonic ideal of Eurotrash area control.
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, I'm also coming in with a 9. I agree with Blake almost completely on this one. This game is like mathematically almost perfect, but it does lack a kind of je ne sais quoi to kind of push it into the 9.5 and up range. Because it's kind of like this game is always so much fun. And as Ben was gushing about it, I agree. I'm always down to play this game. It's like always a blast. However, it doesn't really have like for me, like to get into that upper echelon, it really has to have like it has to be deeply strategically interesting. And Komet, as much fun as it is, it's not like super deep strategy, which is also why it's a good game to introduce people with. It's not like you're making plans within plans in this game. You're kind of just going at it and it's blast and you're having fun. And you might have some neat underhanded things to do, but there's not the same sort of level of strategy that there might be in some of the hidden information games that we've talked about, like, maybe Forbidden Stars, or we haven't talked about Dominant Species, but that game is also very interesting strategically.
Yeah.
And some games like that are just like I can think about them for hours even when I'm not playing them. And this game's not really like that. I'm sort of like I'm when I'm playing it, I'm here in the moment, but I'm not like super intellectually tickled. It's more of like a visceral experience.
Yeah.
Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, this is this is the game that I think of as that I hold almost all area control games to. And when I think about like mechanical perfection or like kind of how they fixed certain problems with the genre and that kind of thing, because this game just has so many little smart um, implementations of things that may not be obvious to people that for whom this is their first area control game, but for people who have played a lot of area control games, you'll recognize like, oh, this is how they solved such and such thing, and that's why it's there. And I appreciate that attention to detail from the devs. It goes a long way. So yeah,
Yeah.
All right.
Kemet, Blood and Sand.
yeah, gets a big thumbs up from us for sure. All right, well, I think this is it for our re-recording of the Commit Infection Sky episode. We tried to make it quick this time. The original episode stretched to 8 hours, so it's a good thing you guys didn't see it.
Yeah, we made it quick because we've already talked about it. There was no other external time pressure whatsoever, you know?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
None.
hopefully one of these days we'll figure out our technical issues. But until then, thanks for watching and or listening.
Bye.